The rain had been falling since dusk, steady and relentless, turning the city outside eternalist of his windows into a blur of silver streaks and distorted reflections. The building was silent now. No keyboards clicking, no hum of conversation drifting from conference rooms. Just the muted trum of rain and the faint boss of fluorescent lights overhead. Ethan sat alone at the long walnut conference table, sleeves rolled up, tie discarded on the chair beside him. HIS laptop aglow with spreadsheets and projections quarterly revenue, marketing pensions, a acquisition for STS. Numbers that had once thrilled him now felt oddly hollow. At Fartuta, Ethan had built Hill Dynamics from a Tachar garage and a second-hand server into a tech firm valued north of $30 million. It missed birthdays, anniversaries, entire weekends. It told himself it was temporary, that the sacrifice was for something bigger. For Teram, he leaned back, rubbing Cody's eyes, when his phone vibrated against the polished table. Missed call, Lydia. A voicemail icon blinked beneath IT. He considered ignoring IT. Lydia often left messages when she knew he was working late, updates about dinner plans, reminders about social obligations. Her voice a comforting background reached him to Elias' life. He usually listened it on the drive home. But something made him stop. A pressure behind OGS ribs. A tightening he couldn't explain. Ethan picked up the phone and pressed play. At first, all he heard was muffled movement. Fabric brushing against a microphone. Tenderly, ludiously, breathless, unrestrained. Not the political issue set of fundraisers or dinners with investors. This one was intimate. Loose. Good, she said, giggling. I can't believe we almost got caught to date. Yet her stomach dropped, a cold weight settling there. When Ethan came home early, she continued, her was letting conspiratorial. I thought my heart was going to stop too. A man left in response. Deep, familiar. You worry too much, the man said. Is clueless. Always has been. Ethan felt his body go completely still. He knew that voice. Marcus Bell. His business partner. His software. His best friend since our year of college. The man who had stood beside him at H's wedding. Hot toasted to Ethan and Lydia's foot with a crooked grin and a whiskey glass raised high. I know, Lydia said softly. The way she was set to speak to Ethan when they were alone at night. But this has been going on for 8 months, Marcus. Eventually is going to figure it out. So what if he dies? Marcus replied easily. The printer protects nothing. You'll get him of everything. He still have a more share of the company to him. Yet Hans' fingers tightened around the phone. We went either way, sweetheart. They left together. The sound caught in yet Hans' ears long after the voicemail ended. The phone slipped from which's hint and landed face down on the table with a dull toy. 8 months. Not a mistake. Not a drunken lapse. A second life. Ethan stared at the darkened screen. His revision barely visible. His face looked older suddenly. Harder. As if the man had been 10 minutes earlier no longer existed. He picked the phone back up and pressed play again. Enter again. Each replay stripped through another memory. Another lie revealed in retrospect. The late nights Lydia cleaned to her book club meetings. Martha Southern need to attend industry conferences on weekends. The unfamiliar men's dress shirt Ethan had found tangled in their laundry weeks ago. Lydia's flustered explanation about a surprise anniversary gift that now felt grotesque. He didn't see ROI. He didn't shower. He didn't throw anything. Instead, something cold and precise settled into place inside him, like frost warming on glass. Ethan stood slowly and walked to the window. The city light shimmered below, indifferent to its collapse. Cars moved. People lived their lives. Somewhere, Lydia was probably smiling at her phone. To think Marcus, securing the belly that her husband was exactly what he had called him. Clueless. Ethan turned back to the table and opened his laptop. He created a document and titled IT simply. Plan. He began making lists. Legal, financial, corporate, personal. What could be protested? What could be dismantled? What could be reclaimed? He worked through the night, full BY black coffee and a clarity so sharp it bordered on serenity. This was in trades. Rage was laurt. This was focus. At 6:12 утра, as dawn crept into the sky, Ethan made his first call. Andrew call. The voice answered, brisk and alert. I need a hours journey. Ethan said calmly. And I need discretion too. There was a pause. 10. When can you come in? I won't. Ethan replied. You'll come to me too. The second call went to the board secretary at Hill Dynamics. The third to a forensic accountant had met 2 years earlier at a conference with Naomi Kessler. Each conversation was brief. Clinical. Efficient. By the time the office began to stir again, Ethan was already gone. That evening, Lydia came home humming. Hill's kita ubiła the door, hair slightly damp from the rain. You would not beverage all night, she lived, dropping her pears. She talked for 2 hours straight too. Ethan looked up from the kitchen counter and smiled. How was it tea? He asked. Lydia leaned in and kissed Udi's cheek. Fun. You're thinking of doing a spa weekend in Napa next month. Sounds great, Ethan said. You deserve a tea. She smiled at him, eyes clear, unburdened. And in that moment, Ethan knew something fundamental had changed there. He would never confront her. He would never beg for the truth. He would never ask why. Some betrayals didn't deserve a conversation. They deserved the erasure. Ethan Hill became an expert at pretending nothing had changed there. IT was the most difficult role he had ever played, and the most important. Every morning, he followed the same routine. He woke before Lydia, showered quietly, dressed in the same tailored suits, and kissed her forehead before leaving the house. He asked about her plans. He commented on the weather. He nodded at the right moments when she talked about people whose names now made his skin crawl. At work, he shook Marcus Boy's hand, clapped him on the shoulder during meetings, laughed at his jokes. He even shared drinks with him once. Sitting across a polished mahogany bar table while Marcus complained about the stress of running a growing company. You know how it is, Marcus said, swelling which is bourbon. Pressure from every direction to it. Ethan smiled thinly. Had the price of success to it. Inside, something calcified. He did not drink. He did not confide. He did not hesitate. He observed. The forensic accountant, Dr. Naomi Kessler, moved through a Hill Dynamics like a shadow. Officially, she was conducting a routine internal audit ahead of a potential expansion. Unofficially, she was dissecting 3 years of financial records with surgical precision. She found irregularities within a week. Your partner is sloppy, she told Ethan during a Latinic meeting in AG's private office. Confident. That's always dangerous. She laid out the evidence, shelving this with no physical addresses, in by Caesar proved by Marcus himself, many routed through a letter count that eventually surfaced of Sharia. How much? Ethan asked. Conservatively, 2 million. Possibly more. Ethan nodded once. The Kermit everything. Meanwhile, Andrew Cole began dismantling the marriage on paper. Prenup, loopholes. Asset protection strategies. Timeline that would leave Lydia disoriented and legally coordinated. She trusts you completely, Andrew said. That gives you leverage, but we must stay clean. Everything must be defensible. I don't want to hurt her, Ethan replied. I want distance to it. Andrew studied him carefully. Distance can hurt more than anger. At home, Lydia noticed nothing. She planned dinners, talked about future trips, made love to Ethan when the mood struck her, whispering familiar words against each skin. Ethan responded with mechanical precision, which his body cooperating while his mind remained somewhere else entirely. He watched her face during intimacy, searching for guilt, finding none. She had read it in reality so thoroughly that she believed the IT. Markers, 2, Grucarellers. Here proved the NYC suite or trivial. Boasted openly about upcoming infos to. Talked about selling shares, about freedom, about how some people never knew how good they had IT. Once, during a board meeting, Marcus leaned over and murmured, You ever feel like you're carrying that weight? Ethan met witches as calmly. Sometimes, the trap took shape quietly. BOI the timely dear suggested celebrating their 15th anniversary at the Italian restaurant where Ethan hit proposed. Everything was ready. That place meant so much to us. She said warmly, 15 years. Can you believe it? I can. Ethan replied. We began counting. The night was perfect. The morning after their anniversary dinner, Ethan Hill left the Hill family home before dawn. Dear, still flushed from wine and candlelight, we went sleepily from the door away. Business trip to Seattle, he muttered, keeping quiet tone casual, as if nothing had shifted. She didn't suspect. She rarely did. Ethan drove past the familiar suburban streets, the quiet home of the car making with the stand drawn of early traffic. He didn't go to Seattle. Instead, he checked into a corporate apartment across town, rented under Andrew Chola's name. Neutral furniture, generic artwork on the walls, no traces of life that could be traced back to him. From there, he watched. From 9 часов утра on the dot, everything fell into place. The first domino, Lydia's inboog. An email from Andrew Cole landed in Horenboog with the precision of a sniper's bullet. Subject, Dreyer's papers. Attachment, the voicemail recording that had begun this nightmare. The body of the email was theirs. I know everything. Do not contact me. Old communication goes through Andrew Cole. She read the words once, twice, a third time, her fingers trembling. The words tilted beneath her. 50 minutes later, Marcus Bell arrived there at Hill Dynamics, onward that the most carefully built empire Chevrolet was about to unravel. Yet Hanshazar and intermediaries had ensured he would be greeted by a more tense surprise. Federal investigators, seated round the edges of his table, folders meticulously arranged there, evidence laid bare. Shell companies, fake vendors, money traced to offshore accounts. $2 million vanished like smoke, leaving only cold documentation in their wake. Ethan observed the chase indirectly, which is Paul stated. He had prepared for this. The forensic accountant's findings, the attorney's strategies, every legal and financial lever had been engaged with surgical precision. Nothing was left to chance. Lydia called yet Hans' numberer incessantly, 63 times in the first hour. Each call went unanswered. Each message played into the void of an untraceable line. Texts bounced. Emails remained unread. She drove to Ichi's office, hoping to confront him. The receptionist, a young woman new to the company, delivered the truth with carefully measured sympathy. Ethan had sold Ichi's majority stake in Hill Dynamics 3 days prior. A Venturi capital firm now held the controlling interest. Every board position, every public watching role, removed there. It's impossible, Lydia whispered, panic rising. He would have told me to. Im Sauri, MRS Hill, the receptionist said. All inquiries are directed to Andrew Cole. Should read their giant bank accounts. Frazern. Credit cards cancelled. Mortgages renounced in four-name loan, weeks prior, orchestrated through a notary who had signed all one everything Ethan required. Every legal and financial shield had been erected, leaving her with nothing, no leverage, no escape, no cards to play. By noon, Marcus Bell's arrest made the news. The headline screamed, Take executive judge Davis embodiment and to wire fraud. Every detail meticulously sourced. 3 years of financial misconduct, Hill Dynamics implicated, a stabilized role acknowledged they yet protested. Lydia read it as someone had carved her life into letters of wire. She knew. She had to know. Somewhere in her heart, she admitted that Ethan had orchestrated it all. Somehow, impossibly, he had predicted and destroyed her careful plan before it even came to fruition. She called Andrew Chola's office, demanding to speak with Ethan. I need to talk to my husband, she cried. The attorney is unavailable, the receptionist said with professionalism. All communication must be through your legal counsel. I don't have an attorney. Lydia shouted, panic sharpening into fury. I need him. The Dreyer's papers outline everything, MRS Hill. I suggest you reaching counsel immediately to her home, once a sanctuary of 15 years, was now a monument to aberrations. Every photograph of Ethan wedding day, party, company celebrations haunted her. In every image, he smiled at her with unguarded laugh, trusted a chink from every young girl. And she had obliterated it. Marcus calls from jail were frantic, filled with fear and incredulity. Lidier, you have to help me. I can get bail. Moaierke ons afrazen. Talk to Ethan. Tell him everything back. Marcus, she whispered, feeling here so schrijven inside. He won't talk to me. He won't talk to anyone to. You have to find him. Use zebi. Use anything. Marcus barked, desperation dripping through the receiver. We destroyed him. He destroyed us. We deserve this. Lidier hung up. She knew paket to Marcus again. For 3 months, she moved through the world like a woman underwater. The drawers unfolded to it toward Yethan's prisons. Depositians, affidavits, electronic signatures her life was being dismantled while she remained invisible to the architect of her ruin. Helen Morna, Horterny, expressed genuine bafflement. Even never seen anything like this, Helen admitted during a consultation. Is given you the house, have the liquid assets, and a generous alignment is structure. He wants nothing beyond dissolving the marriage efficiently too. I don't want the money, Lidier said. I want him to. Legally, this is excellent, Helen pressed gently. Most powers is fight tooth and nail. Ethan has been extraordinarily fair. That's what makes it worse, Lidier muttered. Is generous because he doesn't care. I'm not even worth it is saying girl. Elaine's way net. He caught you. 8 months. These markers. You don't get to dictate how he processes it. The words go deeper than any courtroom sentence could. Who expect? Lidier hired a private investigator, Killer Pride, who worked for 6 painstaking weeks. Each lead fizzled into nothing. The corporate apartment was gone. Phone numbers vanished. Mutual friends and colleagues had been contacted behind the call and reminded of the benefits of discretion. Most complied. Loyalty and financial incentive intertwined in perfect alignment. Caleb finally reported a few verified facts. Ethan sold Hill Dynamics for $40 million. He resigned from all boards, charities, and public obligations. He had left the country. Destination still BY legal mechanism as being Chalip's rich. The man doesn't want to be found, Caleb said, and he has reassurances to make sure he isn't. Lydia's friends tried to console her. Rachel, the super set cover for her numerous lies, barely spoke. The social circle whispered and pointed. She was isolated. Gasted BY, Ellis, and confidentials alike. The public narrative had swallowed her whole. One night, she parked outside Hill Dynamics, now on BY Stratosphere Capital. The building renamed, stripped of every personal mark Ethan had left behind. She remembered delivering midnight dinners to him during all-night tears, watching him nod over teacher's desk, exhausted but smiling when she arrived there. Your MOI look, he had said once. Every success, every sleepless night, every sacrifice he had done it for Terum. And she had burnt it all down. The divorce was finalized. Lidier pinned the email from, and you call and froze. A single attachment, a letter from Ethan. Written for HS on peace, not for redemption. The first weeks after the divorce left Lidier Hill adrift in a fortune longer recognized. Her apartment was too quiet. The echoes of her own footsteps across hardwood flowers were a constant reminder of the absence she could no longer deny. Each day, she moved through a routine she had once shared with Ethan. Breakfast alone, the home of the city outside, the flicker of streetlights through blinds. Everything familiar was reflected through a lens of betrayal and regret. Marcus Boestrial loomed like a spectre. Lidier attended every session, sitting in the back row, careful to remain unseen by cameras and reporters who would have relished the spectacle. The courtroom became a theater of reckoning, though she was not the defendant. She watched as the prostitution unfolded the intricate web Ethan had discovered, laying out evidence with devastating clarity. G.R. Naomi Kessler, the forensic accountant, was a force of meticulous logic and sharp observation. She guided the jury through the labyrinth of shell companies, fraudulent invoices, and offshore transfers. Each transaction was evidence not only of financial crime but of the arrogance and carelessness of a man who had underestimated Ethan. Exhibit 24 shows a series of payments routed through air accounts in the Cayman Islands, Dia Kessler explained. Her voice was crisp, unemotional, and yet a carried that silenced the room. These were authorized by Bill enter providendries signaturi. They were created to obscure ombudsman Tatalinka prahimetsele $2.3 million over het hirtesjewen maandste. Lydia's chest tightened. The man she had thought was untouchable was being onmest in meticulous detail, and she had been composite. Her role had been minor but critical. Each glance exchanged there, each whispered reassurance, each lie she told had enabled this. The defense attempted to paint Marcus as a man under pressure, a victim of circumstance, a brilliant mind trapped by financial constraints. But the evidence was overwhelming, incontrovertible. IT beoor het Hans Mark, though he remained unseen, his evidence more powerful than any witness testimony. 4 hours of jury deliberation. The verdict returned. Guilty on all counts of fraud, embezzlement, and tachivasieren. Marcus Weiss, once confident and slick in their suites, had a get years in months. The expensive fabrics klonk accorded to him as he was literally in cuffs. The weight of each misdeeds was absolute. Lydia felt a hollow mix of relief and despair. Justice had been served, but she was not hers to feel victorious. She had lost everything. Yet Hans Ebersen's, which is meticulous silence, had accomplished what confrontation never could. A complete and undeniable dismantling of her word. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. MRS Hill, do you have a comment? They demanded, their microphones thrust toward her voice. Her response was deliberate, cold. I am no longer MRS Hill. I have no comment. A persistent reporter followed her to her car. Is it true he had an affair with Marbell? Is that how your husband discovered the embezzlement? Lydia paused, feeling the weight of truth pressing against her chest. Yes, she had betrayed. She had destroyed her marriage. And yes, Ethan had wound out and responded in a way that left her powerless. Yes, she said quietly. That is the story. I was selfish and reckless, and I lost the best thing in my life. Right that. The article went viral within 48 hours. Skauntus bans perfestrivingi. Tek exekich possessive is lover, disappears. Social media dissected her ways, her choices, her perceived them maururti. She stopped reading after the first 100 comments. The cruelty was breathtaking. People she had never met felt entitled to judge her, to construct a maururti play around her pain. Some of it was agreed. She had been miserable, she had deserved the consequences. But the performative justice of strangers was not redemption. IT was spectacle. Her family responded, quietly furious. Her Matker's voice was tight, controlled, disappointed. Lydia, the whole family is talking. How could you do this to Ethan? He was always so good to you too. I know, Mom, Lydia whispered. Her father refused to speak her name, leaving silence where condemnation might have been expected. I know. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't here just. Her voice faltered. There was no excuse. Nothing could explain Rue 8 months of betrayal. Days blurred into weeks. The house she had once shared with Ethan felt empty, haunted by shadows of memories. Valerium zelf photographs chronicled the years she had spent living in the illusion of love and trust. Wedding day, yet Hanshin steady, EJS smile luminous. Party, which is gleaming at her excitement. First major contract, pride, joy, triumph which was now a cruel remainder of what she had destroyed. She tried to occupy herself. She sold the house, moved into a modest apartment, the walls blank but for the few pieces of art she had once admired with him. Classes, volunteer work at a men's shelter, endless walks in the park, but everything felt muted, distorted, underwater. She hid the money, the freedom, the time-buttoned anchor, and compass. One afternoon, while sorting through boxes Ethan had left behind in the garage, she discovered their wedding album. She opened it slowly, touching each page as styles of photographs might speak, might forgive, might reverse the damage. Instead, they screamed the truth. Every smile, every glance, every intimate moment she had betrayed it all. At the bottom of the album was an envelope, faintly creased. Daniel's handwriting no, yet Hans' handwriting familiar. For our 15th anniversary, IT read. Inside, a letter written today before the voicemail that had ended their marriage. My love, 15 years ago I made the best decision of my life when I asked you to marry me. Every success, every achievement has been in service of giving you the life you deserve. I had plans to step back, to share more of myself, to build a future with you that we both dreamed of. You betrayed me before I could even surprise you. I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I choose a more peace. I will build a lie you cannot reach, and I will find happiness without your interference. Her hand shook. He had planned to give her more of himself, more attention, more presence, more light, just as she had been turning away. If she had waited, confessed, been honest, perhaps things could have been different. But the past was immutable, cruel, and permanent. She carefully returned the letter to the envelope, replacing it at the bottom of the box. Some mistakes did not receive second chances. Months later, Lydia's life settled into a arduous teaching of quiet penance. No romance, no pursuit of joy beyond work and volunteerism. Art history course became her anchor, a way to reclaim fragments of her own identity. Her past would not be erased, but perhaps it could be understood, internalized, and transformed. And then, one Tuesday afternoon, 2 years after the divorce, she saw him. Ethan Hale. He stood near the university courtyard fountain, talking with a woman she did not recognize. Older, leaner, tanned. Hair slightly longer, casually brushed back. Every gesture precise. Every tilt of each head, every subtle nod, unmistakable ideas. The control, the calm, the presence the man she had lost, and who had lost nothing. Her breath caught, her legs froze. She had imagined this moment countless times. What she would say, how she would apologize, how she would seek absolution. And now, watching him let the man's understated joke, she realized that he didn't want her apologies. He had moved forward in a way she had not. The woman beside him touched each's arm with an easy that communicated comfort, trust, and intimacy. She was younger, understatedly beautiful, dark hair pulled back. Lydia should have left, should have vanished. Yet her feet betrayed her, carrying her forward before Tal could intervene. Ethan, she whispered. He turned. For a flicker of a second, something passed through each as a surprise. Pain, resignation, and then he replaced it with neutrality. Lydia, he said evenly. This is unexpected thing. I didn't know you were here. I wouldn't have. She stumbled, words failing. I know, he said. It's fine. This is a public space. The woman, dear Selene Ward, stepped back. I leave you too, she said quietly. Yet hand-gaze returned to Lydia, measured, controlled. How have you been? The simplicity of the question cut through layers of guilt, regret, and lingering grief. I've been learning to live with my choices, she admitted. Going back to school, trying to become someone better too. That's good. I'm glad, he said. Even that phrase was sharp attention anticipated. Are you? The word brought all the weight of 2 years of silence crashing down. She swallowed, voice tight. Surviving tech. If we build something new, he said. Small, peaceful, honest, and someone who deserves more I trusted. She understood this thing. That was the final truth she had been writing. He had rebuilt a life without her. Forgiveness had already been granted silently, but it was not a restoration. It was a declaration. You do not exist in my life anymore. She nodded, tears blurring her vision. I loved you. I truly did. I just didn't love you enough to. He gave a small, a sad smile. The difference between us was how we handled our imperfections. I wish you well, Lydia, and with that, he walked back to the outward. Their hands met in a quiet, unspoken understanding. Life continued. Lydia stood by the fountain, watching until they disappeared into the building. The weight of her choices pressed against her chest, heavy, indescribable. Yet, in that same moment, she felt the first faint stirring of clarity, living with the consequences could be her path forward. Not redemption, not reprieve but understanding, acceptance, and slow rebuilding. The night after seeing Ethan Hill in the courtyard, Lydia sat alone in her small apartment. The city hummed quietly outside the window, lights flickering across distant skyscrapers. Its glare reminded that life moved on with or without her. She pulled out voor journaliten, leed gerbond naar boek zet he ben horon le kamperend romans of we can begin to write. Today I saw him, for the first time in 2 years. Her hand trembled slightly. He isn't changed. Mr. Dikru, precise, come. He has moved on, and I cannot interfere. I cannot ask for forgiveness, nor would I be mine to receive if he offered. The past is fixed. All I have is the present, and what I choose to pull from here. The words were deliberate. Each sentence carried the weight of her mistakes. For the first time, she acknowledged as the depth of the lie she had shattered not only hers but yet Hans. To people's world she been decimated by betrayal, and she alone had ignited the spark. The earth for these markers, once a drink escaped from her discontent, now were put in sharp relief as selfish, cruel, and small. She did not dwell on excuses. There were none. She had acted for desire and convenience, for nothing more brute than evil. Her mind drifted to it and how he had handled the betrayal. Silence, absence, meticulous precision. No confrontation, no public spectacle, no emotional outburst. Just methodical dismantling of the structures that had allowed betrayal to thrive. Markers behind bars. Assets reorganized. Drouwers geërmpelited. Legier had no recours. No bargaining power. She had disappeared from the public sphere while simultaneously reshaping forward beyond repair. She traced each's method with her thoughts, studying each's choices in a strong admiration. IT asn't cruelty. IT asn't vindictiveness. IT was survival, self-preservation, and clarity. She realized the elegance of each's strategy, every move precise, every risk calculated. Ethan had turned her misdeeds into a mirror, reflecting not only her guilt but her powerlessness to undo the consequences. The weeks that followed were quiet but exhausting. Lydia returned to her studies in art history with deliberative focus. She volunteered at a men's shelter, helping others rebuild after trauma, observing, quietly, offering practical guidance. IT became a kind of penance her efforts aimed not at redemption in the eyes of eternal society, but at the personal discipline of accountability. Each act of service, each page of coursework, each early morning walk through the park was a step toward a life she could inhabit with or change them in a think of it out.